Hey there guys, my name is Octavian, and this is going to be a shoutcast of a Ranked 5s match between Team Origen and Team Gamers 2. I was lucky enough, while looking through some of the replays over on LOLKing, to find this particular game, and I hope it's going to be an interesting one. These are both two very highly skilled teams, and Origen has been hyped a lot recently as potentially being one of the better new teams on the scene, so this could be very, very interesting to watch, and we are promising to have a bit of good gameplay here. Looks like Gamers 2 is setting up a fairly standard defensive line along their side of the river, while Origen does the same thing, and I'm going to be calling them Origen. I don't know if it's supposed to be pronounced Origen or Oregon. I'm not entirely sure, but just for consistency's sake, I'm going to be going with Origen this particular shoutcast. And it looks like Animator's going to be starting at his Gromp camp, most likely. Yeah, he's roaming over to there. Most junglers in this preseason don't enjoy starting at the colored buffs anymore. They rather prefer to start at one of the smaller camps, the sort of solitary camps off by themselves, be it the Krugs or the Gromp camp, which then gives them that ever-valuable smite buff, the Krugs on one hand allowing them to stun jungle monsters, which gives them a lot more survivability in the jungle and allows them to come out a lot more healthy after a good solid clear, and the Gromp camp allowing them to just simply do more damage to the jungle camps after smiting it, which has the same results effectively. I've yet to figure out exactly which camp is superior for getting a better clear in terms of health and which one's superior for getting a better clear in terms of speed, or indeed if one of them is better in both respects, but they're similar enough that neither jungler should really be gimped for whichever choice they made. But I'll move off of the junglers now. We do have a lot of other lanes to get into. Down on the bottom side is going to be Kasing and Yuki playing a Janna and Corki lane. Very standard stuff there. Nothing really wrong with that combo, whereas on the side of Origen it is Mithy and Zvanillion playing a Nami and Tristana combo. Now Tristana has always been kind of a competitor. There's never really been a meta where Tristana fell out entirely, but she's been top tier before and she's been second or third tier, and I'd say currently that she's resting comfortably at second tier right now. She used to be top tier, but some changes to rapid fire made it so that she fell from grace a little bit, but she's still quite powerful, and rapid fire still gives quite a burst of attack speed. It's just while you don't have rapid fire up, you don't quite get as much attack speed as you did before, and rapid fire does not last quite as long as it used to, so she can't quite spam the hugely impressive attack speed buff all the time, but she still gets it in time to be able to make use of all three shots that the Nami will be giving her with Tidecaller's Blessing, so there's still some good synergy in that lane, and it's still a very, very solid lane. As far as some of the other ones go, it's going to be a middle lane Orianna versus Ahri, a very defensive and wave clear focused pick from the side of Gamers 2, whereas Origen is going with a more assassination heavy comp, especially with the Nidalee in the top lane. That Nidalee, ever since her changes a while ago now, has been more and more a sort of huntress, which I suppose is a bit more true to the form of her lore, rather than the kind of poke heavy monstrosity that she used to be. The Q turn around from Amazing. He's going to be going in onto Animator here. Animator is going very, very low. The Ignite is burning, but he gets the shield from Orianna and he flashes away. He just about survives. Now Xpeke is in a 1v1 duel with Perks here. Perks is getting very, very low though. The charm lands. Amazing comes back in again, but the first blood goes over to Orianna. Now Touch My Tagada has teleported out of the top lane, and this fight has been going on so long that bottom lane has had time to roam up to the mid to participate a little bit, and they chase away the Nidalee. First blood going over to Gamers 2. Animator nearly died there on Jarvan, but a clutch Orianna shield saved his life at the last moment from those last few ticks of Ignite that would have spelled his doom. And that's going to be the early advantage going over to Gamers 2. As Orianna clears out the last few minions before probably heading on back to base. Kinda low here, and Amazing is back from base himself. If Orianna chose to stick around in that lane, she could find a bit of a nasty surprise in the form of Amazing's Lee Sin coming in and giving him a bit of a, I don't know, belated gank. So he is going to be heading on back home to base. Picked up the first blood as well, so going to rush right into the Chalice. Now most mid laners currently do not actually like going the Chalice route. They prefer to go the Morellonomicon route, but Chalice is really it got nerfed. It's been nerfed in succession 2 or 3 times now, each a very small nerf, but over time it did add up. But we have a little bit of a fight in the bottom lane. I'll get back to that in just a second. Yuki got bubbled up, now he's forced to Valkyrie away. The trade went fairly in favor of Origen, but Gamers 2 did manage to chunk away a bit of Vanillion's health bar, but Nami still has a good chunk of mana left, and has a lot of healing as well in Ebb and Flow, whereas Janna simply doesn't have that option. The damage mitigation is certainly there, but up in top lane, Touch My Tagada is getting chased away. Nidalee, very, very slippery to catch up to, might be able to escape here. The Q does not land from JWoww, so he decides to turn around and try and flank in onto the Nidalee, going under the tower perhaps. Yeah, taking a few tower shots. There's the knockup from Animator, and Touch My Tagada is going down for the second kill of the game to Gamers 2. And as I was saying, in the bottom lane, Mithy still has some of his mana bar left, and Nami certainly has the advantage in terms of sustain in this lane, because while Janna does have damage mitigation, that's not very useful after the damage has already happened. So if they trade evenly in a duel, it's really going to be very much in favor of Mithy and Vanillion, simply because Mithy has the ability to heal up after a trade. However, I would say within a duel, Kasing and Yuki probably have the advantage, because Yuki on Corgi just has more instantaneous burst than a Tristana can output, and Kasing has, I would say, at least equivalent burst and protective capabilities to a Nami in a 2v2, though Nami is certainly not one to be underestimated. Always been a popular support pretty much ever since one patch after her release. On release, Nami was a little bit underpowered, but a little bit after her release, she's been popular ever since then because she just has a good amount of stuff in her kit. She has everything that a support needs. Utility, slows, speed buffs on everything. There's the bubble ending onto Yuki, though. Some good damage traded back, and Kasing has no mana, so really can't afford to make these sorts of trades. Yuki is going dangerously low. We might be able to see Amazing come down for a gank at some time, though currently he's spending a bit of time near the mid lane, in the enemy jungle actually, clearing out a ping ward. You saw the ping on the map right there, as some trades go on between Orianna and Ahri in the mid lane. Top lane is really the only place that we haven't focused at all ever, and we did just see a gank up there, giving another kill over to the side of Gamers 2, but there's the Orb of Deception, gonna be bringing down Perks. Actually, Amazing finishes off the kill, and Jarvan is there just kind of to bear witness to Orianna's death, not in time to make any difference in the engagement. Oh, and Kasing popping Monsoon just for the heal. They really want to stay in lane, they don't want to head back home. They don't want to miss out on any of this CS, so Kasing's going to spend the mana and, well, the big cooldown just to get the heal, the sustain for the lane. So I suppose Janna does have some lane sustain if she chooses to pop her ult for that effect. Not quite as reliable lane sustain as Nami's Ebb and Flow, but it does exist, so I guess Kasing goes right there and proves me wrong in terms of this matchup. As we swap back up to the top lane, where Touch My Tagada has been pushed under the tower, and is actually losing out on CS, which is something I didn't really expect to see. Nidalee's become a fairly decent lane bully ever since her changes, and while Lissandra can very well hold her own against most lanes, I wouldn't say that I'd put her on quite the same par as a Nidalee in terms of presence in a lane, though to be fair, she's much, much better at following up on ganks. And we've seen a gank up in the top lane. We've already seen that. They dove under the tower. Ooh, there's the ult from Vanillion, though, knocking Yuki away, doing a burst of damage as well. But really, that's all. No follow-up after that. So Yuki's just going to continue to farm. And eventually, perhaps Kasing will have Monsoon back up again to use it for the lane sustain, which would be a little bit odd, but if it's worked out for them as a tool. It's meant that Yuki has managed to stay within 5 or 6 farm of Vanillion here, when really he should have been falling behind, given all the trades that have been going on in favor of Origen. Mithy's trying to make some aggressive play happen here. Zones them away, because they really don't want that fight. Probably the most intelligent decision by them, especially considering that Amazing's off around behind, sitting in the bush near the tower there. They might choose to go for a dive. They have to know that this is coming, though, because suddenly Mithy and Vanillion start pushing like mad. They want to get the minions under the tower so that Amazing can come in without taking a few tower shots. Knocks him against the wall. Beautiful Dragon's Rage. Kasing now is the focus of their ire. He's got ignited. He's going to be going down to the damage from Vanillion. Meanwhile, 2 teleports like beacons into the sky are both coming in near the tower. JWoww finishes off the kill onto Mithy and then ults himself to survive a little bit longer, but it doesn't really matter. He's forced to flash over the wall anyway. Overall, a 3-for-1 trade in favor heavily of Team Origen. Well played tower dive, drawing resources from everywhere. Mid lane was the only place on the map that didn't participate. They pulled in both junglers, they pulled in both top laners, which is actually quite good for both of the top laners because it means that neither one of them has to deal with the other one having the teleport advantage, because they both chose to teleport into that fight. That means that teleport is down for both of them, and pretty much at exactly the same time, too. Incredibly good map awareness from both top laners in this, though you have to assume that the teams are in some sort of voice comm talking to one another, so they probably called it out as well, but still good team coordination from both sides, and that is why I was so excited to cast this game for you, and why I'm still excited. Wonderful tower dive. Let's get back into what's going on currently, though. Stop raving about what just happened. Dragon still yet to be contested by either team. If either side had gotten a true advantage there without having to give up so many hit points, because, well, Origen did get the advantage there, but Amazing went incredibly low. Everybody was really low. One of them died, so they didn't really have enough pressure on the map to go and take the dragon, so it's still up. It still has yet to be taken out. And so grabbing that's actually going to be a really big deal. The first dragon of the game makes the next dragon of the game easier to get because it just gives you a flat buff to a lot of things. I mean, sure, it buffs your damage because it gives you AP and AD, but AP also scales with healing spells. It scales with movement speed buffs sometimes. For Janna, it's going to scale with the heal on monsoons, so it's more than just a damage buff. It has a lot of different somewhat intangible benefits. The first dragon buff is probably the most important global objective in the first 25 minutes of the game, I would have to say. Unless you're pushing so hard that you're getting to an inhibitor turret at that point, which at that point probably getting the dragon anyways. Peke firing off a charm lands onto a minion though, probably not the target he really wanted to hit. And it looks like Team Origen is grouping up somewhat in the mid lane here, while Vanillion manages to hold his own on bottom lane against Yuki perfectly fine, which isn't really what I expected. I expected the Corki to have a much more early presence in this game, which is kind of a bad sign for gamers too, because they don't have the late game AD carry in this matchup, and Vanillion just 1v1 Corki. Why didn't... Directed camera. I curse you sometimes, but whatever, we don't need to know what happened, we just need to know that it did happen, and that the ramifications of that are going to be far, far reaching. That gives the already ahead Tristana 2-0, well 1-0 before that, another kill, putting her at 2-0, and taking the AD carry off the board. Like, that is a huge kill right there. It was only one kill in a 1v1 situation. It didn't seem too incredibly flashy. But Tristana isn't supposed to be ahead early, so getting ahead early on Tristana means she will be ahead late, pretty much guaranteed, which is when you want her to be ahead. It got them the dragon because that was down, which means it puts Tristana even further ahead, and it helps out Nidalee, who's up in the top lane and has been having a lot of trouble against Lissandra, pretty much the one problem spot for the side of Origen. So it's really sort of a panacea for all of their problems, but there is JWoww going in under the tower. They really need to make something happen here, and they are trying to do it. They understand that they have to do something to be able to pull back control of this game, and there is Xpeke going right in. The Ignite is dropped into JWoww. He flashes forward for the auto attack. There's the Monsoon pop by Kasing. He has it back up, and this time he's not just using it for sustained shutdown, actually going over to him off of the Lee Sin. 2-for-2 trade, 2-for-4 trade, as Vanillion is on a killing spree, and Yuki has been split pushing bot lane this whole time. Well played by the side of Gamers too. Realizing that the game was starting to slip from their control, they took control of it back. They grabbed that steering wheel and they drove the car right into mid lane, right behind the turret, and dove in onto 3 or 4 people and actually played the dive pretty damn well, if I have to say myself. But Vanillion has roamed from the bottom lane. The damage is not quite there before Janna flashes away, and then he simply buster shots the Orianna back to make sure that he doesn't get any ill-fated results of his attempted 2v1. It was a brave move, but I mean, he traded his ult for a flash, so I would say that Vanillion certainly got the better of that trade. Meanwhile, Amazing is going to clear out his red buff. We have a little bit of a quieter moment on the map now that we've had so many big crashing moments of action that have tried to determine the fate of this game, but it's still incredibly, incredibly even. neither side really getting a decisive lead yet. I mean, you could say that Origen did have a decisive lead. They had their Tristana, they still have their Tristana at 3-0. That is going to be a problem, but now there's an answer on the other side. There's a 3-1 Lysandra who can press R on that Tristana if she manages to gap close to that point. So basically what they have to do is land the Glacial Tomb onto Svenillion. They have to do that in one of these team fights. If they do that, they probably win the team fight because it's really easy for Oriana to follow up after that with a Shock Blast. Sorry. No, Shockwave. Shockwave. Shock Blast is the Jace ability. Yeah. Talking too quickly, sometimes you mess things up. I do know ability champion names. Champion ability names. See what I mean? But down on the bottom side of the map, Svenillion is going to be knocked up by the tornado there, but honestly, they don't want this fight. The turret is incredibly low. They might be able to burst it down. Svenillion goes incredibly low himself, forced to pop the heal as the tidal wave comes out to keep Kasing and Yuki away. But as I said before, it's still relevant now. Mithy has the healing advantage right here, so Svenillion is going to be able to easily sustain back up. Meanwhile, up in top lane, JWoww actually ults himself! I'm going to go ahead and assume that that was a misclick, probably meant to click on Touch My Target as Nidalee, but accidentally ulted himself. However, the roam from Oriana manages to finish off the kill in the end. Either that or it was just to be BM and say, look, I don't need to ult you, I'll just ult myself, because I want to be a pretty ice statue, and you'll die anyways to my teammates. I doubt that was it, though. These players seem to be taking this match pretty damn seriously, which is what you'd kind of have to do when you're playing at this caliber of play. Every player in this game is one of the best players, arguably, on the EU West server. And so there are 10 very, very heavyweight players here, 10 powerhouses of the game. And it is an interesting and wonderful to watch game so far. Still, neither side really having a solid lead. The gold is actually pretty much exactly even. The kills are just one away from each other, and the turrets are exactly even. So that dragon, right now, is actually probably making a huge difference because it's the only real advantage in favor of one side or the other, sitting over on the side of Origen. As you see, amazing. Heading back to base. Exciting stuff, folks. Ooh, the charm lands onto Perks, going in under the tower. There's the Deathfire Grasp. The Ignite is ticking, but the Monsoon from Kasing is going to be saving the life of her friendly robot and ball friend. Still, though, for one, ult got, I believe, the... No, actually. I thought that Oriana was running Barrier, but it turns out Oriana's running Ignite, so didn't get the Barrier of Oriana, seeing as that wouldn't happen. Svenillion flashing forward, and the explosive shot dot going to be finishing off Oriana. Rampage for Svenillion. That is wonderful for the side of Origen. Having a powerfully fed Tristana at only 18 minutes into the game means at 25 minutes or 35 minutes into the game, they are going to have a monstrous and scary Tristana. Here comes the Cataclysm, locking up Svenillion. Actually, he doesn't have his rocket jump back up. He finally gets it up in time to try and escape here. He did get exhausted, but that doesn't really matter when you're slowed. Even when slowed, you can still jump away. JWoww flashing forward to land the ulti onto Lee Sin, but everybody has flash. And Gamers 2 can't catch up to them, and a beautiful spear weaves its way through the enemy team. Touch My Target finishing off Jarvan, and now chasing after Kasing and JWoww. JWoww does use Glacial Path to get away as the spear is dodged to the side. And so Touch My Target is not going to be able to get any follow-up kills after that, but that was a glorious spear threaded right through the enemy team to hit the single low-health member that it would kill. That is the power of AP Nidalee. Still a viable build kit. Still a viable build, folks. Don't have to go Bruiser AD, which has been the flavor of the last few months, I suppose. I guess you could just call it her new build path, or new standard build path. Not really a flavor of the month thing anymore. Kasing getting Deathfire Grasp, the Orb Deception hits as well. But they don't really want to continue to follow up on that one, since Ari's kind of all alone on that side of the wall. And here comes JWoww. He doesn't have ult, though, so not really going to be able to do much. Just kind of is a scary looking dude going into the middle of them. Amazing! Finishes off the kill with a sneaky sonic wave over the wall. And Ari just kind of came in there with a lot of damage, and Jarvan didn't survive anymore. That was a very cut and dried kill. Flash forward, land the charm, press all the other buttons, and win the fight. It doesn't have to be flashy. It can just work. That's fine. You don't have to make epic plays every time you make any kinds of plays. You can just make average plays sometimes, and that might be good enough. Xing and Yuki roaming through the jungle, and it looks like we're back to another quiet moments, folks. So you guys know what that means. We're going to go ahead and look at some of the item builds that have been forming. It's been plenty time at this point to see where people have been going with their builds. As I said, that is an AP Nidalee, and going with a fairly odd AP Nidalee build, actually. Very magic penetration focused rather than raw AP, which is certainly not the way you would have seen a traditional AP Nidalee be built back when it was the standard. So perhaps up in the top side, Touch My Tagada knows something that I don't. That's probably true. Probably true that one of the best players in EU West knows something about this game that I don't. I'd say it's a pretty fair bet. In terms of some of the other builds, we have a Static Shiv first item on Svenillion, who has now built into an Infinity Edge, so he's going to start hurting a lot right now. I mean, he was doing fine before, but this is a power spike extraordinaire for this guy. Flash forced from Janna, and up in the top lane, Amazing and Touch My Tagada are going to make short work of JWoww. Didn't even have time to Alt-R himself and become invulnerable. The burst from those two is obscene. Speaking of, that is a warrior enchantment on Amazing, so he has some damage on Lee Sin, but it looks like past that he's not going to be building anymore. Now Xing has eaten a few auto attacks from Tristana, goes down fairly low as Animator. What are you doing, Animator? You don't have a team to follow up. He's forced to flash out of there, and Amazing's going to keep on with the chase. Nice sidestep, just avoiding the Q. He was even hit by the Chilling Smite right beforehand, so he sidestepped that while slowed. Well done. I mean, his mechanical skills are obviously on point, but I'm still a little bit confused as to why he decided to try and go for that flank. Meanwhile, Speke is pushing the bottom lane solo. He doesn't really need any backup right now. Anybody who tries to come to 1v1 him will get basically deleted. He's 2-1-3 on that Ahri, which is a respectable KDA, but he has a Deathfire Grasp, and that's the more important thing to note. Ooh, however, JWoww might be able to handle it. He does bring him down, mainly because he was under the tower when he tried to fight him. But enough backup shows up from the side of Origen to at least take revenge on their fallen comrade. An Animator, good God! That Jarvan is quite squishy. He has no armor items yet, and Svenillion, as I've mentioned a few times now, is doing very, very well on Tristana. So this Tristana is going to be able to absolutely melt Jarvan. As you can see right here, he's going down very, very slow. He's dominating now, and Mithy just about survives with his life. Now the exhaust has been dropped onto Svenillion, and actually a bunch of damage comes out from Perks, but he flashes away, and there's Touch My Tagada trapped under the tower. He has nowhere to go. He tosses a spear onto Yuki. He wants to at least take somebody down with him, but he doesn't quite finish the leap before a shrapnel auto attack from Yuki brings him down. Ooh, flash forward for the crit. Svenillion is godlike. I don't know that he really needed the crit, but it was to secure the kill. Just to make sure. I mean, Oriana was quite low. I think even if he hadn't gotten the lucky crit right there, and I think the Static Shiv procced as well, so Oriana had just no way to get out of that one, aside from not being there in the first place, but that option had already been exhausted by the time the flash happened. JWoww pushing out the mid lane, then roaming somewhere else. There are two pink wards right next to each other. Both of these teams know that there is a pink ward next to their pink ward, but they have some sort of truce over there on that minimap near the Baron Pit. I'm not quite sure why neither side has chosen to kill the enemy pink ward, but maybe they know something I don't. As I said, these are some of the better players in, well, the world, so I would be surprised if they didn't. Finally, Xpeke is going to go after that pink ward, and justice has been served. Baron might be an objective that these teams are considering here. They are at least considering the vision war around it, and it looks like Origen is certainly winning that war. Now JWoww is getting chased by Touch My Tagada up in the top lane. The heals are pretty insane from an AP Nidalee. I had almost forgotten. I wish I could forget. It's just painful memories, my friends. As Mithy continues to do his best to gain complete control of the vision around this dragon. I mean, Baron Pit. Wrong side of the map, Oct. Xing is trying to get some control back, but Peke is not going to have any bit of that. He dashes forward. The DFG was used, but Xing didn't quite die. His own shields plus the shields from the Oriana, there are a lot of shields on the side of Gamers too, kept him alive, and they are actually quite good at fending off this Ahri. They've managed to avoid getting assassinated in, I would say, like 4 out of 5 attempts, but they haven't really been able to catch her and kill her, so she still has a decent KDA simply by virtue of not having died very much, which is quite a nice skill to have, by the way. One of the better things you can do in this game is simply not die, even if you don't make flashy plays everywhere. Not dying is a very nice thing. Oh, touch my Tagada under the tower, though, and he gets stunned up as well. That was a misstep. JWoww finishes off that kill. Easy as pie. Now, Animator is in a bit of trouble. He gets kicked away, but through Kasing's Monsoon. The half a second he spent in the edge of the Monsoon actually saved him as Shockwave completely whiffs. And that's in favor of the side of Gamers 2. We haven't seen a fight that went really hard in favor of them yet, and I can't actually say that went really hard in favor of them. They got 1 kill. But they blew the Oriana ulti, and they traded Monsoon for it, essentially, as well as Lissandra's ult. Lissandra used her ulti in the sort of semi-1v1 off to the top side to get the 1 kill that they got. But because they had no presence on the other side of the map, Origen's going to take the second dragon anyways. Even though they kind of lost that teamfight, it doesn't matter. Gamers 2 had no presence over there on the bottom of the map. They don't have a single ward on that side of the map. So they lost the dragon. And the second buff might not be quite as important as the first, but you know, you gotta get number 2 before you can get number 3 and 5, and I missed one of the numbers in there somewhere, but I'm sure someone will tell me which one. And basically counting, if you don't get number 2, you can't get up to number 5, which is the one you really want, because that's the one that makes your entire team into veritable gods among men, and unstoppable forces of pushing and fighting all in one. Whereas number 2 just makes you very good at pushing. And actually does help the jungler out quite a bit, because it doesn't only apply to lane minion monsters, it applies to monsters in the jungle as well. So it makes clearing the jungle that much easier for your jungler, which means that they can get back to